Hello, how you doing? How you doing?
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
We'd like to invite Elena John from Satlium to read the Taiko team statement about Prosperity Mine. Here we are at Tasico's office.
Kedwa ala nshnuknukwa Elena Squachitra Catholic Machgan Buddha Chalat Machgan. I am myself not Tsilhqot'in, but Tsilhqot'in is an ally of our tribe. Hundreds and hundreds of years ago, our tribe went to battle with Tsilhqot'in, but we find ourselves more and more being forced closer and closer to battle these mining companies, logging companies, anything that comes in to destroy our water and our Mother Earth. The following is a statement from the Tsilhqot'in in June 2010. The Tsilhqot'in Nation has never ceded or surrendered our rights or titles to our lands, water, or way of life, including our future generations. We are gratefully still able to drink from our streams, rivers, lakes, alongside the wildlife. It is our duty and responsibility to protect these headwaters, wildlife, plants, including the forests, and lands that sustain us and have done so since time immemorial. We still live with respect to our Mother Earth, annually gathering our medicines, berries, hunting and fishing, and passing on these traditional practices to our children, youth, and share with others on our land. Our people have always protected these lands and wild salmon, as in the War of 1864 when our war leaders stopped the road coming in from Butte Inlet, the southwest side of the Tsilhqot'in territory. Our people knew back then that if they allowed the invasion for gold, it would destroy our wild salmon along with our way of life. And again, today we are faced with the same threat. Please support the Tsilhqot'in in protecting Fish Lake. In spite of an environmental assessment that found it impossible to mine around Fish Lake without irreparable damage to the lake and ecosystem, Taseco Mines Limited has submitted another proposal calling in the new Prosperity Mine. This new proposal is as destructive as the first, with the intent of turning Little Fish Lake into a toxic dump, bringing Fish Lake to a slower death than the initial proposal. On November 7th, the Canadian Environmental Assessment Agency is to announce that if they will consider the revised proposal. Taseco Mines is proceeding as though New Prosperity is a done deal. The Tsilhqot'in National Government and other First Nations communities, with the support of UBCIC and many environmental and human rights groups, stand firm in opposing this project, which will destroy an area that is sacred to the Indigenous communities in the Tsilhqot'in and would eventually affect all the waterways that are connected to the Taseco and Chilko rivers. BC Premier Christy Clark stated that if government can get out of the way and ease the process as much as possible for mines to get going in BC, our goals can be a reality. I have no question about it. Support is needed from people everywhere to stop the pursuit of such mining practices that disrespects the right of First Nations people and leave a legacy of destruction for the generations to follow. To support the protection of Fish Lake and the Tsilhqot'in communities, you can write to Christy Clark at premier@gov.bc.ca. Kukshtun-kau, thank you for your time.
Next, we'd like to invite Kanahus to speak about Imperial Metals, Kitty Corner, Chitasiko.
Kanahus Balthus Quest. I'm from the Secwepemc and the Tamaka Nations in the interior of so-called British Columbia. We've come here to be a part of the Indigenous Assembly here in Vancouver with Indigenous people from all over the world that are fighting against Canadian mining companies. These Canadian mining companies are going all over Indigenous territories, not just here in so-called BC and Canada, but in so-called Guatemala and Mexico and Papua New Guinea. All over the world they're infecting Indigenous peoples and their homelands and their right to live, the right to clean water. The Imperial Metals is in the headwaters of our river, the Adams River system. where the world's largest sockeye salmon spawning grounds exist. So this will affect not just us, not just the salmon, but all the Indigenous nations downstream that eat these salmon on a daily basis. And as we all know, as Indigenous peoples, we will continue to eat the salmon. Even when the salmon is contaminated, you find Indigenous people still eating the salmon, even though they know it's poison. And this is what we have to stop. We need to protect our salmon, we need to protect our water. Imperial Metals and these companies have offices here around us, and they're making decisions that impact us on the ground, us, Indigenous people all over the world. Imperial Metals, remember that name. Taseko Mines, remember that name. Remember these names that we're bringing out, because we need everybody's support and everybody to stand up in this fight, because it's not just for us, it's for you too, because the same water that was here when the dinosaurs were here is the same water that we have here today. So when they contaminate 500 million tons and gallons of water and all those big statistics that they spit out at us, when they contaminate that much water, we can't get that clean water back. That water is contaminated forever. Forever. And people don't really understand what that word means. It means when our great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren will be here, that water will still be contaminated. So we need people's support. We need people's prayers, because they are powerful. We need people's prayers for the water and for the people and for the Indigenous land and freedom fighters to protect us, because we are standing and we're raising our babies, so they will continue this fight. Like a chant.
I'd like to introduce Takaya Blaney from Slaman First Nation.
Hello, my name is Takaya Blaney. I'm 10 years old and I'm from Slaman Nation. I'm speaking here because people of Canada need to know about Canada, not just about how the companies see Canada and tell it to the citizens, about how we Indigenous people see Canada. And we need them to know that it's not just a big place to just develop and pollute. It's where our ancestors have lived, and it's our territory, and we won't stand for it being developed. One of the reasons I'm speaking here is because of Slaman. And my nation, Slaman, is going through treaty right now. And when the treaty first came in, the people said no, no. And they kept voting, and they kept bothering them, and they kept saying no. And when we put the residential schools in, the culture was lost. And it wasn't lost forever, but it was just, they lost enough so the current generations do not understand the value of the traditions. And so now they're starting to say yes to things. So, if they're listening right now. So I need people to listen that we can't just keep trading with like developments coming through and asking Indigenous people to trade their land. We can't trade it. It's not ours to give away. So. The song that I was singing back at the art gallery was called Earth Revolution, and it's about how we, the people, can stand up to these corporations, and it's also about how children can stand up to these corporations. Because one day the corporations will have to pass down the planet to the children, because they will be inheriting it. And what will the children inherit? A big polluted earth with... Is that what we're going to be inheriting? No! So we need to really change how they are doing these things right now. So the children of the future can live in the earth and share the same experiences as just, seeing forest as we do today. So, thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on. Let's move on. We're going to make our way to